Hello and welcome back to the James Kennedy podcast. I hope you're all good. Man, what a week I have had since I last spoke to you guys. Jesus Christ, I was in London pretty much for most of last week, helping out outside the Royal Courts of Justice, doing a bit of presenting and interviewing for the Free Assange campaign. As you'd expect, it pissed down pretty much the entire time, which makes everything more pleasant. But outside of that, it was a great turnout, man. You probably didn't see any of it on the mainstream media because I can't imagine why. But maybe they just forgot. But yeah, there was fucking loads and loads of people there. And there were tons of mainstream media from other countries, from Australia and around Europe and stuff like that. Tons of media and press there. But I didn't see any of the people that we recognize, such as the BBC or any of those guys. Maybe they didn't get the memo. One of the most historic and significant press trials of our times, and the news didn't turn up. Strange. I guess they must have had much more important things to be informing you guys about, such as, I don't know, sport or celebrity gossip, who knows. But loads of people did turn up, made a lot of noise and showed a lot of support and solidarity for Julian Assange and his wife Stella, who was still fighting this ridiculous and inhumane, Kafka-esque madness that has resulted in a journalist being in Belmarsh prison with no charge for several years now, with the ever-looming threat of being extradited to the US. We live in crazy times. But it's always heartening when you attend one of these things because you get to restore your faith in humanity. You get to put a bit of fire back in your belly and realize that you're not alone. There are loads of people that feel exactly the same way as you do, and they're willing to stand up united in the rain on the streets and make some noise for what they believe. It's a beautiful thing, man. There were some amazing speakers there as well. I got to interview Jeremy Corbyn. I interviewed the brilliant Matt Kennard from Declassified. I interviewed Richard Medhurst, Andy Feinstein, a ton of dudes. It was wicked. And then after the 2 days, we did the march to Downing Street, where there was more speakers and more rabble-rousing. And by all accounts, from the people who were inside the courts, all doesn't seem as if it is lost yet on this cause. So there's still a little bit of hope yet that one day, if not soon, but one day, Julian Assange will walk free, as he should do. And for anyone that listens to this podcast on YouTube, because I do put the videos there even though that they're audio only, I will actually be doing something different on the YouTube channel because we filmed and broadcasted all of the interviews on the Stella Assange live stream as they went out. But I'm going to be actually uploading them straight to the YouTube channel so that you can actually see some live video interviews out in the rain with my hair all sopping in my face. On the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel for the podcast is James Kennedy Podcast on YouTube. That's content that's only going to be there on the YouTube. It's not going to be on Spotify, Apple, or any other platform. So head over there and check it out if you want to see what I go up to. And also, while you're there, why not give the channel a subscribe? Why not do that? So that was my week last week. This week, I'm home in the dry, and after a few rehearsals with the mighty James Kennedy and the Underdogs getting ready for our show this weekend, I've mostly been talking to super clever and interesting dudes for this podcast to bring to you lucky listeners, such as today's guest. Today we are going to be doing a deep dive into all things brain related. We're going to be discussing the brain, the mind, your thoughts, some of the bizarre ways in which your mind and your brain kind of play tricks on themselves, and whatever else happens along the way. But it's a subject that I'm super fascinated in, and I can't wait to pick our guest's brains, for want of a better phrase. He's a fellow Welshman calling in live from just down the road in Cardiff, and he's here today to blow all of our minds on all things brain-related. I'm talking, of course, about the awesome Dean Burnett, neuroscientist, lecturer, best-selling author, podcaster, and all-round clever, funny, and brilliant dude. Dean, it's great to have you with us today, man. Thank you so much for doing this. How the hell are you doing?
I mean, I can't promise any mind-blowing. If anything, neuroscientists, we're taught not to do that. That's that's counterproductive. Do not blow, destroy, dismantle, or obliterate brains or minds in any way. That's like neuroscience 101, that is. So, yeah. But other than that, yes, looking forward to it.
Okay. Just to clarify then, Dean is not going to blow any brains, but he is going to fascinate you with his insight and wisdom on all things brain and mind related.
To keep your integrity of the brain completely intact. Absolutely no mind blowing.
No, but he will not be destroying your brains. He will not be providing any subliminal messaging. None of that business. Is all good above board stuff.
Keep expectations low. Everyone's happy then. No one leaves disappointed.
Well, I want to come on to your new book, Emotional Ignorance, but I'd like to save that till later. I'd like to do a little bit of groundwork before that to sort of discuss and explore the brain. But I'd like to start with emotions, if that's cool, because that's not something that we tend to necessarily associate with a direct brain function. So it's a big question, which I'm sure is probably going to lead into other areas. What are emotions? Where are emotions? And why are emotions?
Yeah, the answer would be yep. I know, just keep it on the down low, shall we say? Yeah, well, that's something I came across with this exact question myself very recently because I was I agreed to write a book about emotions. It was I'd done other books and I think because I did a book called The Happy Brain, which is about happiness specifically, but in a more scientific way. It wasn't so much like what is happiness, is well, why do these particular things make us happy? Why does our brain like this stuff and not that stuff? And because sometimes it's confusing. Like people like horror films, which is meant to scare and frighten and terrify you, but they make people happy. Or sad music, the musician yourself, there's always sad and angry songs. People like that, but that logically you think that they wouldn't like that because those are quote unquote negative emotions. So that was intriguing to me. So I sort of looked into that when this whole big journey about it. Book came out and went well. Everyone's happy, ironically. But you do the book tours and people kept saying to me, "Why do you write about happiness? Why not another emotion?" Which I feel like that was they meant well, but I was like saying, "Why did you write this book? Why not a different book?" Darling, thanks very much. Glad you enjoyed. But so then obviously, but that kept happening. So I realized, there is obviously a lot of interest in emotions as a thing, as a concept. So I sort of went to my publisher because they asked about my next book. And I thought, well, how about I do a book all about emotions? And they said, yeah, that sounds great. We shook hands and signed contracts. And the problem was that I thought, be led to believe at least, that the science of emotions, the understanding of it was well established. Because even in the neuroscience world, at lectures, people just mention emotions as and then of course an emotional reaction occurs, but as if it was like, well, we've done all that. Let's move this. Now we're talking the good stuff. That was like the basics that have already been covered. But as I sat down and write this book, I realized that actually it's more of a conspiracy of silence thing. Like the Italian neuroscience world is going, well, we don't really know what they are, so let's just not talk about them. Like an embarrassing cousin. Right. You don't know what they do. You just in the attic and hope for the best. And so I realized, well, actually, I don't think people know about this. This is actually really, really complex stuff. And to this day, it remains that there is no widely agreed on definition of emotions. It's not something any particular people, scientists have we haven't sat down and gone, right, this emotion is. We all agree? Yes, right, let's move on. And that's obviously an issue because if nobody agrees on what something is, how do you study it? Someone says, I'm studying emotions, and then someone else says, no, I'm studying it. I'm studying this, but that's not what I think emotion is. What I think is this. Well, I think you're wrong, and X, Y, Z and stuff. So, it's if you can't just define it, describe it, pin it down within certain parameters, like they are this, they do this, they act like this, or isolate them in the brain. These things you can't really do, and they are, although we can see what the effects they have and the basic principles of them, that they seem to be everywhere in the brain, like they spread throughout it. Right. Like the veins in marble, they're just there and there and there and over there, and this is involved too. So, to say there's which bit of the brain does emotions it's not how anything works.
Right.
I mean, what that it was, it'd be a lot easier for me. I don't have to write the book 4 times and keep changing it. So, yes, but that's a very far more complex question than most realize, I think.
Yeah, because I feel like the way I phrased the question the way I did, where I said that we don't, I personally don't consider emotions to be a brain function, is that we tend to feel them in our body, don't we? We tend to feel anger in tense muscles. We tend to feel love in our stomach, in our gut. We tend to feel fear or anxiety, as pain. So I guess we tend to think of emotions in a physical sense, but I guess is that just the way that they manifest themselves? So they're born of the brain, but expressed through the physiological system that they're kind of woven into. And if so, what is the purpose of that? Is it evolutionary? Is it a survival mechanism? And if so, why do we get random malfunctions of that system, like, panic attacks or irrational love?
Yeah. No, I think that's a valid point. Actually, that was one of the first ever, study of emotions in history was back in ancient Greece. And there was the Stoics, the Stoic school of thought, which they basically thought nothing that can't be tangibly measured or, recognized as an actual thing is technically real. Like there's nothing, you shouldn't pay attention to things which are purely fantastical or like purely hypothetical. But they thought, well, emotions are real because, like you say, they have these physical. When we're sad, we cry. Liquid comes from out of our eyes, and that's not what normally happens. So, let's say when you feel nervous or scared, you feel it in your stomach. Or your butterflies in your stomach, and your heart beats faster, and Your skin goes white when you're afraid and scared. And this is obviously a big part of the expression of emotions. And there is one school of thought which does argue that emotions actually start in the body. Like we experience something and your body has all these reactions, physical reactions. And your brain says, oh, look at all these physical reactions. That means anger. That means fear. So like they say, it's the brain actually, it's like it's the builder taking the delivery of plans from the architect. So, okay, so that's what I got to do, is it? And, that's not the main theory of emotions. I mean, like that does have a lot of limits to it. And like, for example, you can experience emotions without any physical things happening to you. I think everyone's experienced this. You walk on the road and suddenly you're hit by a really embarrassing memory. And you go, oh God! You just sort of cringe into yourself on the pavement and people just stepping over you because you just realized a horrifically embarrassing thing that happened when you were a teenager. But there was no physical thing that happened to make you think of that. You just did. Because brains be braining like that. And, so like obviously there's more to it. But a big part of it is actually we don't just feel emotions, experience them. We actually broadcast them. We share them because we're a social species.
Right.
So when we have these emotional reactions and we sort of display them to others, that in the evolutionary sense is a really effective and efficient way of communicating with those around you. So like if your eyes go wide and you're scared, they go, oh, look, that person's scared. Oh God, they must be scared of something. I'll be scared too, because obviously now everyone's in a sort of poised state.
Right.
Lots of different theories about why we cry, like there's loads of different chemical differences in emotional tears, which make other people feel certain ways and stuff. And it's also a big signaling thing. Like we think about laughter. Laughter is a weird one because we can experience being amused. We experience lots of emotions, but they don't often involve this massive involuntary spasm. Like you just, because the whole point of laughter is it's a social thing. It bonds us together. Because when someone else laughs, we want to laugh too. Like studies suggest that if you're part of a group, you're like 30 times more likely to laugh than if you're not. If you're by yourself, which is why watching stand-up videos by yourself is always a less rewarding experience.
Right.
You're like, yeah, that's funny. But when you're part of a big crowd, like you're which isn't that funny. It's just someone close saying, "Hey, who's from Newport?" Like if I'm into it, like, where are you from? Newport. You're like, all right, calm down. What's wrong with you? We have different emotional experiences in different contexts.
Maybe that's just people from Newport.
That's like, I mean, Newport's a lovely place to drive through.
So it's a social thing then. You think that is that where things are leaning at the moment, that it's primarily a social thing, it's a communicative thing, which is why it expresses itself physically. Yeah.
I mean, human emotions especially, because we are the most social species. We're classed as ultra social. I know like people might think, well, humans are very social, we're awful to each other. But yeah, obviously look at any Twitter thread or comments under an article, there's always going to be just fire and brimstone and horrible people doing horrible stuff. But you have to sort of, that's sort of like one thing. But in terms of sheer raw numbers, there are like close to 8 billion humans on this planet, and we are incredibly tolerant to each other. Generally, human cities can have like 25, 30 million people in them, and people just go about their day. No other species can do that. Like if you've done a gig, like you've got like 1,000 people watching you sitting there enjoying, like you're sitting there side by side, really technically cramped in, and they're having a good time. They're enjoying it. Yeah. If somebody replaced those people with chimps, it would be an absolute bloodbath within minutes. Because there'd be like blood and fur and feces like everywhere. I mean, I've done some tough gigs, but
I was going to say, it sounds like some gigs I've done in the past.
Yeah, there are some festivals which could have a similar vibe to them, but yeah, like that's just other social species. Those are our closest relatives evolutionary, and like they can't handle being that sort of group closed thing, whereas we can. But you got to think about how many emotions only exist because of the context of other people. Right. Like guilt. Guilt doesn't make any sense unless other people are involved. Or embarrassment. Like one of the examples I've used before is that if you're in your home, in the bathroom, just want to go for a shower, your clothes fall off. Like, oh, that's weird. I have to speak to my tailor. But you just get in the shower, then because you're doing anything. But if I stood in a hotel lobby, you're queuing for a train ticket, then when the clothes fall off, that's horrific. That's mortifying and embarrassing. Right. Because other people are there. Yeah. You can sort of like, oh my God, embarrassment only makes sense if other people are part of the process. So yeah, a lot of the human emotions are very social just about in terms of their origins even.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. Well, what about anger then? Because anger is something that can be, well, certainly for me anyway, I can be angry. I can be perfectly angry by myself. And anger can also be kind of just held within oneself as well, doesn't it? It doesn't necessarily have to be communicated. You can just be pissed off at nothing all day. Or maybe I'm just talking about me.
Anger is a sort of it's a strong response to problems and issues. And one thing we do, a lot of things make us angry. Threats to our autonomy. Like if because we want to think we're in control, because our brain finds that a lot more relaxing. If you're in control, something bad happens, you have the option to fix it. So anything which makes us lose control makes us angrier. It's a problem called reactance. Like that's what that describes that process where you didn't want to do something until someone told you couldn't, and now you absolutely do want to do it because you were told you can't.
Right.
It's like it happens all the time. Like people complain, like, "Oh, I can't believe that shop's closing down." No, do you ever go? No, too expensive. but now you can't. You want to, and that. But seeing in unfairness and injustice, these things anger us. But like these are things which don't need other people, although they often do involve other people. And if anything, when they don't involve other people, it makes it worse. Like if you drop your phone and the screen crack, stops working. Or your printers are obviously a real common cause of anger because they don't do what you want them to do.
Yes, useless.
But then that makes it worse because if you're angry at someone else, you can at least still have it out with them. Like, I'm angry at you because X, Y, Z. Whereas a printer's going to just sit there and not printing and just beeping at you. And that's just more infuriating because again, you have no control, you have no autonomy, you have no option to vent. So it sort of builds up. Negative emotions they're just as important as the positive ones because they're how we process the world, our experiences, our memories, our knowledge, and they're a big part of who we are. But because of the way the brain works, the processing of emotions is handled by the same parts which allow you to feel them, which generate them.
Right.
So that's why so they say bottle things up is only ever a short-term solution. Obviously, you don't just fly off the handle if someone says something in passing which you don't like. That's not how social norms work. But if you just keep it bottled up forever and ever, eventually it'll blow because your brain can't keep all this in forever because these emotions need to go somewhere. And anger is a particularly strong one for that because one of the things it does, it triggers the motivation centers of our brain. At the very most fundamental level, we have two types of emotion: approach and avoid. So here's a thing, an issue or a situation. I can either approach it, do something about it, or avoid it, leave it alone. So fear obviously is very very actively triggers the avoid motivation. Like, right, that scares me. Give that a wide berth, don't deal with that, leave that alone, don't know that. Anger does the opposite. It triggers the approach motivation. But often to the point where it's unreasonable. So that's where you get people who are extremely angry, taking on little guys who are furious, taking on guys 5 times their size. Normally they were
guilty.
Don't need that guy. When you're angry enough, exactly. It's not even that uncommon, is it? But when you are
little man syndrome,
angry enough, proper Joe Pesci style.
Yes,
the Joe Pesci style. Just going out stabbing someone to death with a pen because you're furious at them. And so these are things that happen because anger overrules the avoid system. And actually, I think it was actually sort of subtly hinted at in Inside Out. Did you ever see that?
No.
There's a Pixar film of all different emotions.
Okay.
There's one character, anger, whenever he's does something like controlling the head machine, fear tries to stop him and he just slams his head or something or punch. So that's actually sort of a good indicator of what happens when you're angry.
Right.
It overrules the fear reaction.
Okay.
So it makes you want to do something. That's why catharsis is important. People do contact sports or play angry video games or violent video games. It gives you an outlet for these the frustrations of often inanimate objects just being inconvenient.
Right.
You're right to be angry at that, but you have nothing to be angry at because it's just pure misfortune or pure inanimate objects not doing their job. And there's no one to blame for that. It's just bad luck, but you still feel the emotion. It's got to go somewhere. So
right, that's where I'm going wrong. Then I need to have an outlet. I need to start boxing and kicking the shit out of stuff.
Yeah, I've taken that up. It does help. To be honest, it really does.
Right, okay.
I've got a bag in my office now as well for when
nice.
bloody words. Like,
Yeah.
MS Office, how dare you again?
Yes, that's me, man. And I know that it's stupid because, there's nothing we could do about that stuff. Like, I get, like, the traffic is a big one for me. I spend a lot of time on the road, as I'm sure you do, and it just drives me crazy, man. You just end up, like, screaming at the windshield about stuff that you're only winding yourself up. You're only, like, no one else is aware that it's going on. And I know that it's really stupid. I'm trying to kind of, like, remind myself that there are things you could do stuff about and things you can't. And if you can't do anything about it, then you just try and, like, let it go. But I mean, there's a lot of things that we should rightfully be angry about. You know what I mean? We're right to be angry about what's happening, the injustices of the world, like, what's happening in the Middle East right now, or the homeless situation. We're right to be angry about those things, but there is something we can do about those things at some level. You can get involved in something, or you can put your energy behind something, whereas screaming at the traffic, is just pointless for everybody involved. So do you think that is the purpose then of anger? Is that it's a motivating force, that, it can actually fire us into action about doing something about the things that are frustrating us or that we find unjust?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the evolutionary origin of why anger is like this, because it makes us do things. The whole approach,
right.
The problem thing means you want to deal with it. Now, obviously, there'll be plenty of examples where someone tries to deal with it and fails, which is obviously not ideal. But at this point, because we have advanced to a certain point and we built such a complex world around us, anger does cloud your thinking a bit. It makes you want to do something, sort this problem out. And the risk assessment, the caution part of your brain, which is important, which says, like, okay, if you do this, this could happen. That's not a good outcome. Do you want to risk that or not? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And anger sort of blurs that. It weights too heavily in one direction. So, whereas when you're a teenager, this is particularly poignant because obviously teenagers are known to be quote unquote hot-headed or temperamental and passionate about stuff. But that's almost like an evolved trait. It's like they're meant to be like that because that means they get stuff done. You sort of think of humans evolving in the wild in the savannah, just being tribes and stuff. But if you have like sort of like a nice little cozy community, everyone's happy. Partly everyone's sort of like, we got our resources, we got our people, we got our little cozy hut. Great, we'll just stay here forever. What's the big deal? So that quickly leads to stagnation. One drought, one bad season, one migration, and suddenly everything's wiped out. So you get these younger people in their physical prime, technically, who are just suddenly, I don't want to. There's no authority. I want to go and do stuff, and they get angry easily. Makes them sort of expand, branch out. Because I'm going to go over there and find some other people, and then humans become more diverse, more mixed, more like we seek things out. And but there's more to do, to fix, to address, to tackle problems. Is clearly a strongly evolved trait. I mean, we needed to get to this point.
Right.
It's just that now, it's almost like our brain's a victim of its own success, and that we are aware and can be aware, especially now with technology and the phone's internet, that there are plenty of things in the whole world, to be angry about, which we could do something about, but we're not going to see the results of that anytime soon. And one thing our brain doesn't like is like effort with no obvious result, no cause. The good feeling you get from donating money to something is nice. That's helpful. But if you think, right, I want to tackle climate change, for example, I'm going to do all my recycling. I'm going to drive an electric car. I'm not going to take flights. I'm going to live sustainably. So your life is different, but you don't see the obvious outcome of that because it'll be 10, 20, 30, 40, 60, 70, 80 years before improvements are changed because of the way this happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a constant problem which people don't realize with modern politics as well. Like, as in, politicians make the claim now, or the election say, "Oh, I'll do this," and then people go, "Okay, I'll vote for that." And by the time the next election comes around, all the stuff they've done wrong, or like the fallout from their bad decisions, it's too far removed from it. Like austerity is now, in the last few years, kicking our ass. Whereas at the time, people said this is a bad idea, but no one noticed the effects because it's such a big turnaround time. So the whole cause and effect thing I did when this happened. There's so much time between those two when it comes to political or major global issues that we don't connect them instinctively. You have to look into it deeply. So yeah, that's sort of like an ongoing problem. And the emotion part of our brain is powerful, but it wants quick results. It wants instant response. distractions. And the world as we've built it doesn't give that. So we can be frustrated about other things for longer than we should be.
That makes a lot of sense, and it kind of leads to something that I wanted to explore with you, which is obviously the big issue of mental health, because we seem to be going through a mental health epidemic right now. And my analysis of it was because our brains are wired and our bodies have evolved to basically survive in a certain set of circumstances. We've been hunter-gatherers for hundreds of thousands of years longer than we've been living in a digital dystopia of 1,000 bits of content coming at you every second of the day, and bad news from all around the world coming at you, and this high-speed, high-pressure life that never stops. There's no time to think or process anything. And we're just not designed for that, as far as I can tell. So is that why you think that we're seeing this massive surge in mental health problems, everywhere we look?
Yeah, that will be a big part of it. I think it's kind of weird to think like our brains are built for it. Like the smartest parts of our brain are built for it technically because they built this world. We are this smart because we got this world only exists because we made it so. But there's often a big difference between like the topmost part, the most human parts of our brain, the neocortex, the one which evolved in the last like 500,000 years or so, and the deeper parts which control the emotions, like instincts and reflexes and deeper processing. And they are still a big part of our mental state, our existence.
Right.
And I sort of made an analogy to currently what we've got in our heads is like trying to install like the latest operating system, like Windows 25 or like iOS, whatever it is, onto an old laptop, which it can handle it, but it's not built for this. It's like it's whirring on, so getting really hot, and it's like suddenly goes slows down a bit, and so it is it can do it, but it wasn't expected to do this. Right. It wasn't built for this. Because our brains are all so fast. So we have all these complex modern insights and intellectual abilities on like almost like a steam-driven like instinct and emotion system, and that's where the problem lies a lot of the time. So yeah, you can become aware of a drought in Africa leading to starvation, like talk about the 80s and stuff, or wars going on left, right, and centre, but localized in these particular regions, which won't ever really affect you unless you count in the economical fallout left, right, which are subtle and many. But you're aware of it, so you can see like these people being having horrific things happen to them, and like, oh, that's terrible, I'm going to donate some money to that. But you emotionally, you're just seeing that happen, and you're feeling the emotions from it, and you can't really you can't stop it unless you shut yourself out from it. But you still know it's there because you've seen it now. And these things are ongoing. And also we can be stressed out by things which happen or could happen in our world, which are so sort of hypothetical, not even intangible, but like we can be scared of climate change, for example, or economic downturn. Like people panic, like, oh, I might lose my job if I don't make rent this month, or if I don't save up enough money to buy a new house from these are all long-term issues. Like the idea like you could lose your job, for example, is something which might never happen. You just keep working away, like your employer isn't that isn't that fastidious about what you do. It's always going to be a back of your head thing, but it never really goes away. So the stress it causes is triggering the same part of your brain which would cause stress of meeting a tiger or like a predator, or being in the middle of the woods and starving and stuff. So it's all the same process. So it triggers the same fear response that our ancient ancestors had when they heard a wolf nearby. And but when you're in the wild, this stress response, it's almost always quite short term.
Yeah.
It's in okay, so either I beat wolf goes away, or I'm dead. Either way, problem solved. There's actually I can stop being scared now. But now we've got this ability to sort of think, oh, what if the economy doesn't go so well, I lose my job, or my investments don't pan out. Right. There's no end to that. Unless you do lose a job, in which case you're stressed, there's always a case of I might lose my job. Like how do you know you're not going to? There's no way to rule that out. Or it seems like climate change, or what if all these expectations we have? What if I'm not married by 35, or if I don't have kids by 40, and then all my lifelong goals are out the window? Well, these are all hypothetical situations which stress you out based on social expectations and norms which you wouldn't normally subscribe to. And brain's so adept at finding things to worry about. There's something called counterfactual thinking, where we worry about things that not only don't happen, they didn't happen and cannot happen, and we worry about them anyway. Like you run across the road and there's a car coming, you didn't see it, it just misses you. You'll be stressed about that for days. Because what if it hit me? Yeah, but it didn't. That did not happen. Like, the past is the past. You cannot go back and then run in front of the car a bit slower and have it hit you.
Yeah.
But that's like your brain's going, that was a close call. We need to dwell on this so you never do it again. So, that was a bad call. So remember this, learn from this. I'm not going to let it go until you promise me you'll be good.
Right.
And,
right.
So it does, like, it weighs on you. So there's so much stuff. Brain's something called the threat detection network, which anything we sense which could potentially be a hazard or danger to us is sort of like latched onto, and our internal system will go, right, keep an eye on that. You have a low-level stress response just to make sure you don't forget it. And chronic stress is like the Achilles heel of the brain. For that seems to be the underpinning cause of a lot of mental health issues, particularly the main ones like depression, anxiety. Like this constant low-level stress, which our brains didn't evolve to deal with, because we thought stress is like the first part of the fight or flight response, and that's meant to be fight or flight. Something happens to make it go away. So low-level constant stress isn't something our brains were ever meant to be dealing with, and that's like the trigger for a lot of mental health problems. And it's obviously more complex than that, but that's the general running theme of a lot of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's funny, isn't it? It's like we've got the best computer in the world inside our heads, but there are these surprising kind of blind spots within it, like the fact that it can't understand the difference between there's a wolf in front of you and something you just imagined in your head. I mean, you'd think a computer as powerful as the human brain would be able to understand the difference in that. The fact that it can't, and that the stress response and everything is the same for both of those things, the hypothetical and the very real threat, is I find that fascinating, and it feels like quite a shocking design flaw, doesn't it? It
does, yeah. I mean, that was a focus of my first book, just call it The Idiot Brain, because the reason I sort of got into it, the whole writing about it, was because I'm an neuroscientist and have been for 20 years in some form or other. But I was just interested in the brain generally, because I'm from like the South Wales valleys and not a lot of scientists there. And again, this isn't an insult to the intelligence of my peers, my kin, my folk. But it just wasn't the done thing. But I was sort of different to my friends and family, and I was always wondering why am I this oddity, this anomaly in this world which is mostly focused on rugby and other things of that sort. So I just kind of became interested in my own quirks and thinking what's something about my brain which is different, and then I got what it is about brains, and sort of snowballed from there. But when you start doing neuroscience, if you're a big fan of the brain, you slowly but surely realize, all right, it's not perfect. It's not ideal. It's not this, because the mainstream sort of portrayal of the brain I've always had issue with. Not that it's sort of necessarily wrong, but it's very, very overly positive. It's like almost like hagiography. People say, like, human brain, the most amazing thing you've ever encountered, the most complex object in the known universe. You can do this, you can do that. It's all wow, whiz bang, golly wow. But the flaws are always ignored or overlooked, and I do think that can be unhealthy, because if you keep getting told your brain is brilliant and magic and amazing, and then it starts going wrong, you have like a mental health problem, that feels like there's something even more deeply flawed with you. Whereas it's actually a huge hodgepodge of countless different evolved systems over millions and millions of years, which don't get on or work against each other, or just do things in a roundabout way. And I think that's more impressive, the fact that it is this big, glorious mess that we've sort of ended up with, and we've achieved so much with it, and it's got all these flaws, but we sold on anyway. And I think that's a more inspiring, a more healthy outlook. And that's my first book was about that. Like, you think the brain's great, it's not. Here's why. But it's great that we've got all this, and we still sold it on. We still push ahead, and I think that's a more more upbeat message, a more healthy one. So I try to push that where I can.
Yeah, I love that, and it's true, I guess, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a bit like loving someone despite their flaws, isn't it? When you look at the wonders of the world that we've created with this thing, it's fucking insane when you think about it.
Yeah, that's like the analogy I use. Like when you start studying neuroscience as a fan of the brain, it's like moving in with someone you love. You still love them. Obviously, you don't like. You think this is great. Now we spend all our time together. Then slowly but surely, you start to realize, oh, okay, they're not perfect. Then they have issues. Like in the bathroom for 45 minutes again in the morning. That's a long time. But, it's fine. Then it's like, oh, look, the toilet seat's up again. Well,
Again,
they keep doing that snort. It's charming. It's charming. It is. Yeah. Like, well, you get the point thinking, I'm not going to kill them, but I think about it often, which is one of those sort of relationships. Like, the affection's still there, but the reality is also becoming more manifest, and that's again for a long term that's probably healthier, isn't it? If you keep deluding yourself that it's all fine and perfect, and then when it's not, because it won't be, because that's not how life works, then it's something you're far more ready for it. You're far more aware.
Well, from what I understand, and I correct me if I've got this completely ass backwards, brains have this amazing ability to constantly evolve and upgrade themselves, and to lay new pathways within the brain and to kind of get rid of old ones. This thing called neuroplasticity. Is that a thing, or is that something which I've either completely misunderstood or is being missold to us by the happiness industry? Because there is such a thing, I think. The idea that you can change your thinking patterns and that any old negative thought patterns, to use that as an example, will kind of fade away because your brain no longer needs them. And you can relay new positive pathways by changing your thinking process. Just to use that as an example, is neuroplasticity a thing, or have I either got it wrong, or is it not what they're saying that it is?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that neuroplasticity is a thing. It's probably the thing. It is like the brain's. It's what the brain essentially is for. What it does. That's why it is what it is and can do what it can do. Because I think there was this idea for a long time that once you're an adult, your brain's like set in place, and like you're running on a few installed programs, and that's it. That's your lot for life. Then enjoy yourself. But yeah, no, I think obviously it's more plastic when you're younger, when you're still developing, because having to the analogy I have is like when you're young, like especially a child, all the materials are being delivered. If you look at the brain as being like a house, like all the materials being delivered, the plans have been drawn up. People have been saying, well, that should go here, that should go there. And like later childhood to teenage years, that's like the construction has started, scaffolding is up, foundations are going in, like last minute changes are happening. And when you've hit adulthood, the house is built. So like you've got the walls, you've got the foundation, you've got the allocated space. That's sort of what you've got for now. Like you can't really expand beyond that. But you can.
Furniture's in. Yeah. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
That's it. But, that's you.
But you can remodel. You can take a wall out. You can put a wall in. You can add an extension. You can, add a roof. Take windows out. You can put things here and there. You can install solar panels. So you've still got a lot of flexibility, just not as much as you did.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So look, that sort of plasticity we still have. It just takes a while. I think that's what people sort of don't appreciate, that. We obviously have constantly changing brain stuff, because like that's how memories are formed. Every new memory is new connections being formed between neurons, new synapses, which is great. That's a fundamental part of our brain. The brain's always changing. The only unchanging brain is a dead one, and that's no good to anyone. A static brain is not a brain at all, really. That's not something we can do anything with. So neuroplasticity is a huge part of it. And yes, we can we rewire, we change and adapt our modes of thinking. That's the whole point of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. Like it's sort of essentially saying, you think this way. This is your pathway that your thoughts take, A to B to C to D. That's what you've built up over time. That's what your brain's learned to do. It's not a healthy route. It's like a route through a bad neighborhood, or it's a route through like a bad road, which is wrecking your car. So what we need to do is to work out a different path. So rather than go from A to B to C to D, we go from A to E to J to L, loop back round to E. That's sort of
right.
It's the same route. It might take longer. It might take a while to figure it out, but it is. It's a safer one. It's a healthier one to go down, because it's not doing the damage of the other route. And yeah, so it worked it out. It's like trying to find a map. Okay, so if I keep thinking like this, what if I think like this instead? And sometimes like that can become the dominant way of thinking. And therapy it doesn't finish. It's worked. You never use the word cured for mental health stuff. But you can cope now. You've managed. You've adapted. Whereas sometimes it can be a lot more persistent. Like addiction is obviously one which very hard to get rid of that, because it happens at such a fundamental level, like the deep buried reward pathways in your brain have changed. They've reached out to connect to your thinking centers, and those, very rarely just go away. They can become less powerful, but they're still there, and they can be easily reactivated by, that's why addiction often requires constant vigilance. You don't sort of just ignore it because I'm fine, I'm cured, I can just have a drink again. Like that part of your brain which led to addiction is still there. It's just dormant.
Right.
It'll be very easy to trigger this, and so things like that. So like people have depressive spells, like those depressive links in the brain are not being used right now, but stress can happen. They can become more forceful, then you fall back into it. And that's why mental health is like it's a journey rather than here's the full stop. It's like now we're going this way. Okay, let's take this route. Let's use this car. Let's use these supplies. And medication is often mental health medication, psychoactive medication is but often not. It's usually a way of making the brain a bit more flexible. So changing the balances, changing the levels, which mean this particular sequence of thoughts which keep us in this negative state. Now our brain a bit more give, a bit more flexibility, a bit more adaptability. That's why I've done a lot of work in the psychedelics recently. I went to a big conference and stuff, and they are looked to be the next big thing in mental health medication, because they do sort of almost have like a snow globe effect in your brain. They sort of like just shake it up, because like that's where you have these weird trips, because like all the barriers in your brain are just temporarily shut down. But that does make your brain more flexible, more there's a lot more plasticity in it. So. And if you can combine that with some therapy, then you can form these new pathways quicker and easier than you would with just pure therapy alone. So I combined it.
Sounds more fun as well.
Yeah, it was. I did partake in some ketamine therapy.
I was going to say, I'm sure you did.
Yeah, it was very effective. So, well, I say it was effective. The problem I had was I don't know what ketamine therapy is like, and I did know. So that's a problem solved, I guess. I don't want to sort of belittle anyone's rocker problems, but that was my whole point. So I guess that was an easy one to fix.
That's really interesting, man. And that makes a lot of sense as well, actually, when you think about it. I mean, I have noticed that there does seem to be a growing interest from the scientific community in psychedelics. I'm seeing a lot more stuff now, like studies with very positive results, showing the positive effects that psychedelics can have. And it's great because for far too long, psychedelics have been kind of in the stewardship of like the hippie cliche, haven't they? The kind of acid trip, expand your mind, bro, and all that sort of stuff. But it seems as if there is actually now a growing kind of scientific interest in the efficacy of psychedelics. And it does seem to be some truth to what the hippies were saying, as much as I hate to admit that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the scientific community wasn't. They technically weren't the ones who were opposed to them. Like they've been kind of keen to keep researching these things for many years. It was more of a political pressure which stopped them doing it, because,
of course, yeah, it
was just really bad timing. Associated with psychedelics and the counterculture, the hippie movement, was obviously going to put it at very, very deep odds with the Nixon administration, who brought in the war on drugs and stuff, and that was the Reagan stuff like that. That was very much, that was a big blow for psychedelic progress and research. And there were people who were not treating them with the respect they deserved at the time as well, like some Stanford professors just giving them out to students, going, "Yay!" Like, okay, maybe don't do that. That's not ideal. I mean, I'm sure they got good reviews in their student feedback, but a lot of flowers drawn on them, like just big handprints. But obviously that gave a bit of a sour taste in the mouth. But obviously, South Wales was the world's biggest producer of LSD for quite a while, wasn't it?
Really?
Yeah. Operation Jenny. There's a musical about it, I think.
Oh wow!
It's a community in like mid Wales which was just churning out like half the world's LSD because
shit,
it's like so remote. But it's a very fun story. That obviously they wanted to do this big bust, so a lot of undercover cops and stuff moved into the area. So like they had the dealers or the producers sort of being in the Sky local community, and the cops and all the local Welsh people going, well, they're clearly the drug ones.
Yeah.
It's mid Wales. Everyone knows everyone else. Like, so these just cops. So are you a cop or what? Shut up. So a very Welsh story apparently. So
wow, that's fascinating. I had no idea. Bloody hell.
We're not really good at bigging ourselves up sometimes, are we? Like, because
I know. Yeah.
We produced all the world's coal, half the world's LSD. So, what a strange track record for a nation.
I know, that's bloody amazing. Bloody hell. Well, I did a fair amount of that when I was in my early 20s. on the by thanks to the aforementioned Welsh countryside. I just went and picked my own, and had a great time. But that was many years ago, and I haven't really had the guts to open up that Pandora's box again. I don't know if my brain, I don't know what would come out now at this age with everything I've been through since, But at the time, wonderful experiences on psychedelics.
They're a lot more friendly than people realize. I think this whole sort of deep dangerous power thing is it's more of a political ideological image that was generated to deter people. But of course, there is actually a bit of a friction right now, because I was in America, and they're really into. There's so many people invested in making psychedelics the next century, legalize cannabis, because it could be worth trillions if it does take off as they want to do. So lots of financial interest, a lot of economic interest, and capitalist interest in making these psychedelics more available. But they're sort of brushed up against the scientific community, or going, whoa, guys, these things could be great for everyone, if you use them wisely. But they're not toys. They're not like chewy sweets. These things are incredibly powerful substances. You don't just give them out like vitamins. These are, you need real supervision. I mean, recently, obviously Matthew Perry passed away, and it was said to be because of ketamine. What I said, he was taking ketamine therapy. Obviously, he's always struggled with his mental health and addiction issues. He was taking ketamine therapy, but I think the news sort of did, cynically, underhandedly conflate the two. And he was taking ketamine therapy, and he passed away from ketamine-related misadventure, whatever it's called. But his last therapy was 2 weeks earlier, and he clearly obtained some ketamine himself, because obviously he knows that world. I mean, it's the middle of Hollywood. I'm sure there's plenty of people who have it, and took it by himself in his hot tub, which is apparently one of the most common causes of death when it comes to ketamine use, because it's a dissociative. It completely shuts down your body. And if you're in water, that's obviously, I mean, it's one of the things when you say it, of course, but then you don't think it when it's just a recreational drug, isn't it? It's not something you do. But these are the things people don't take into account when they it'd be great if these psychedelics were available to people who needed them and were effective treatments, but just give them out all in sundry. You're asking for a lot of trouble there, because they're not toys. They're not. They're not it's not like a cigarette. These things have a hell of a powerful punch to them, and that could make you do some very unwise stuff.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, they are very, very powerful. I remember just lying on my friend's couch, looking at the ceiling, looking at the Artex, just laughing my ass off at the clouds moving, and the walls changing color. And what I found fascinating about it was that it's not like a trippy kind of synthetic reality. It's a real reality. So I could be talking to you as I am now, and the wall behind you could change from red to yellow, and it would look yellow. It was almost as if my senses and my brain believed that to be a completely different color, and it made everything made perfect sense. It's a very strange thing for me at that young age. It kind of made me realize the fiction of what we perceive as being reality. I mean, if that reality can completely change within the space of an hour or two, and I'm seeing colors that weren't there and things moving that aren't moving and stuff, then what does that say about the reliability of our senses? We've just bought into one version of reality, which in actual fact is just a projection from within inside our mind.
Yeah, I mean, that's something you argue that applies to everything, because ultimately our whole existence boils down to tiny impulses being transmitted along our brain cells. So that's actually our whole reality is that, and there's nothing else. That's our absolute baseline, because obviously everything that happens to us is, in some level, neural impulses, because that's how our brain works, which does lead to a lot of sort of interesting things like schizophrenic hallucinations, audio hallucinations. People hear voices. That's believed to be because we often think to ourselves, we have a sort of internal monologue, and our brains recognize, okay, this is internal, so I don't hear that. This is external. It's all being processed in the language area. Things like schizophrenia, that sort of breaks down that ability to tell between the two.
Right.
So your brain doesn't recognize that this activity is from an internal source rather than external one. So you start hearing it. So the brain goes, okay, so there's language there. I guess that must be someone talking. And then you sort of start hearing this internal monologue, and coupled with the negative emotions because of all the internal turmoil, it becomes quite negative. So you have this constant hallucination that someone's telling you bad things, because obviously that your brain's lost the ability to separate, to keep the dividers between internal and external stuff. And a lot of things can be explained like that. I mean, done a lot of work recently on parasocial relationships, and that people, which is where you become deeply emotionally invested in someone, and they don't know you exist. Obviously, you've got a podcast, you're a member of a band, you've got fans and stuff. These people who are invested in you, and you have nothing against them. You just haven't met them. You don't know them. You don't know who they are, what they do. So it's not two-way. It's a totally one-way relationship. But they're all in. These people are very invested, especially with someone like Taylor Swift or huge names like that who have these massive fan bases of just people who actually worship them. But when you think about it too, your actual friends, your real life relationships, most of those are based on your internal representation of that person.
Right.
Like, you don't spend all day every day with your friends. You met them, you know them, you like, oh, they say this, they think this, they talk like this. Here's my memories of them. And they're your friend, because your brain has this like representation of friend in your brain. And now we've created a world where you can learn all about someone to create that without ever meeting them. You can follow their YouTube channels, you can follow their posts, their TikToks, and read about them and magazines. So you've got all this information. Like, I know this person. They're this. I know where they're born. I know what they're married to. I know what they like. I know what they dislike. I know what they sound like. I know where they were last week because of the festival they were at. So I know all this information. So I can create this representation, just like a regular friend that I'm deeply emotionally invested in.
It's like a relationship. Yeah.
But they don't know me. They've never met. Yeah. It's a parasocial relationship. It's totally one way. But we have that power now, which is odd. Think about it.
Oh, it's crazy, and I suppose it's just one of the other ways in which we're living in an environment now which is completely at odds with the one that our brain spent so long developing to survive in. Social media is a crazy one. I think it's amazing in many ways, and the gifts of the internet are wonderful in so many ways. But there's also, as with everything, and you've sort of alluded to this on your previous point, we need to manage it a little bit. It's not just like, hey, just taking loads of psychedelic drugs. These things need to be done and managed in a very specific way. And I think it's the same with social media and stuff, because it can be very, very unhealthy, can't it? A relationship with social media is one that needs to be managed, I think, where you have a cut-off time and also an understanding of the fact that it's not fucking real as well. You know what I mean? There's a real world out there. Just because your friends are all crushing it on Instagram doesn't mean, that you're the only loser that hasn't got their life in order,
No, that's actually a really valid point. One I've raised a few times, in that we've heard of doom scrolling, and I try to coin the phrase glam scrolling, or like the emotional which is basically going through Instagram and looking at beautiful person, beautiful life, beautiful person, wonderful person, successful, because that sort of gives you the idea that you are, this is how other people's lives are. We know they're not. Obviously, an influencer on Instagram is polished nine ways from Sunday. Like, it's all, it is completely stylized, completely, artificial in that respect. I mean, they probably are a beautiful person to look at, and I don't really know them, but they are like, all these images are completely tailor-made to look like that. But obviously, you don't see their flaws. You never see their flaws, but you do see your own.
Yes.
So in your head, your brain's going, okay, so that's how people are. They have these wonderful lives, wonderful existences. Here's mine. With all like the pants on the side and the dusty carpet that I haven't hoovered yet, and the dishes in the sink, and you see your own reflection, like, you see your bad side, you see like your blemishes and stuff, like, everyone else is beautiful, I'm not, so I guess I'm awful, and then that impacts your mental health. And one of the things I've sort of tried to raise the alarm about with social media, things like Facebook, Twitter, whatever you want to, whichever one you're into, it's one of the biggest dangers, I think, is that the fact now, whatever ridiculous idea you have, you will find someone who agrees with you. And that isn't healthy. I think that's when, in the past, when people always have wild theories and ideas and suggestions about how the world works or should work. And it's social feedback which allows these ideas to flourish or not, because we're a social species, right. And other people have always been our main source of information. Even today, like, we can have reams and reams of peer-reviewed expert analysis and papers saying this is the thing that is happening. This is how it works. And one person goes, yes, but a friend of mine works for the FBI, and he said no. So suddenly, because you've got that's a person. We are built to connect to people. That's why these influencers and TikToks and stuff, they are the ones who sort of like have much of a bigger impact. You can see them; they are relaying an emotional impact and a message to you, and as opposed to dry text and stuff like that. So like, when you imagine, like, in the 80s, when Saturday mates to the pub, and you just go, what, I think the world's actually flat. Like, flat Earth Dave. Like, he used to be mocked for the next
Yeah.
two years.
All right, Trev.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Here he comes, old flatty boy. Like, he comes. So, oh, like, I better not say that again. And then you sort of learn. Your brain learns. Okay, that.
Right.
Don't say that. That's clearly not an accepted theory. But now,
Right.
we can almost go and say, I think it's flat. He goes, oh, me too. Yeah. See, exactly. And then obviously these people agree with me. And I say this outside, people mock me. Oh, okay. So your brain goes, well, these ones make me feel good. Those make me feel bad. So these are the ones I should stick to. And then, so it becomes a self-sustaining thing. These become your group. This is your worldview, and people end up with these wild ideas of how the world should and does work based on the online interactions because nobody tells them, "Are you sure you're not an idiot? Are you sure you're not sort of totally talking out your ass?" And that's
barking mad.
That's a healthy thing to have. Like someone can tell you, no, that's stupid.
Yeah,
people don't like that. They sort of you can't. It's my opinion. Yes, it's your opinion, and it's wrong. Clearly,
that's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we live in strange times, man. I mean, and it's only going to get stranger, I guess. You know what I mean? With the AI is coming. I think we've got a content tsunami coming our way that I don't know if we're prepared to handle it. I mean, if our brain's struggling now to make sense of these things, then Jesus, I don't know what it's going to be like in 10 or 20 years,
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, the AI thing it's interesting. I mean, I feel a lot of it, but also it's part of the familiar cycle, new technologies on the way. And there's a lot of doomsaying about it. I think people thought like once we have airplanes, it's going to be planes in everyone's backyard. It's going to be awful and stuff.
Right.
Like that. So there's always going to be some measure of middle ground. And I think the AR thing is becoming worrying people, but when it comes to replacing people with music and stories and art creations, I don't think that's as big a risk as people think it is. I mean, the general mass-produced stuff, that's something you don't need quality for, but good stories, like good music, emotionally relevant stuff. I think that's still something machines are not going to get because we have this ability. Like AI art, we've all seen it. It also has this similar sort of glossiness to it, this artifice, which people don't relate to. Like that looks wrong. It looks off. It looks like there's something about it which is like because machines know like they're very reductive. Like these are the features of art, therefore I must replicate these in this way. It doesn't work. Whereas if someone like we see those people who can make photorealistic paintings with like just a pencil or like a ballpoint pen, it looks glorious, looks wonderful, and it doesn't bother us in the same way because something about the human brain is like it's so adept at recognizing faces and nuance and emotional relevant stuff that we can recreate it. And machines struggle with that. I mean, the example I like to use is even like on the train station platform. And it's late, it's delayed because it always is. I mean, that's just how this country works at the moment. And then you get the bing bong, passengers on platform 4. And sorry to report that the 17:45 train to London Paddington is delayed by approximately 17 minutes. I am very sorry for the delay to this train. I'm like, but you're not sorry. You're a recorded voice. You're not here. You don't have any. You have no investment in me in my situation. So you're lying to me, and people don't like that. People really don't like that sort of that portrayal, that nuance, that sort of subtle offness. That no, you're a machine. Don't lie to me. And people don't like having interactive machines when they're trying to be emotional. It's a bigger deal than I think a lot of companies realize.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I am one of those doomsayers. Obviously, I think it's because my industry is one that I'm precious about. And I guess we could see that the grubby tentacles of AI working their way into our world, as we sort of speak. And I wanted to ask you about music, actually, because music has a fairly, from what I understand, interesting effect on the brain, doesn't it? Emotional Ignorance. The backstory to that book as well was something that I wanted to get into. If you wanted to go over it again, which I'm sure you probably don't. Obviously, I'm more conscious of keeping you, on schedule today because I know you're busy. But yeah, I mean, you can hear that in Dean's previous interviews as well, where you talk about the personal journey that led to the creation of that book, which is very interesting what you went through to create that book, and also the research and everything in the book and the insights and everything that you discovered through that journey as well are fascinating. So I would urge everybody to check out Dean's latest, Emotional Ignorance, before he rattles out the next one in a few months' time, and head over to deanburnett.com.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
No, thank you, man. Thank you so much for giving your time so generously and giving us an insight into the fascinating world that you work within. And as we said at the start, we made it to the end and no brains have been blown or damaged in the making of this podcast. But Dean Burnett, thank you so much for your time, man. We'll let you head off, and it's been absolutely brilliant to speak with you. I wish you nothing but the best, and best wishes with the book. I can't wait to read it, man.
Cheers, buddy. Bye.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Dean Burnett, what an absolute ledge. Man, like my mind has been blown by that conversation. So much awesome information in there. I'm definitely going to go back and re-listen to that one because we covered a lot of ground there, man. I'm just looking at the notes that I've been scribbling along as Dean was rattling off all that fucking awesome knowledge there. We've got emotions, neuroplasticity, evolution, the brain's flaws, mental health, psychedelics, schizophrenia, social media, AI, the interesting effects of music on the brain, trauma, happiness, the unconscious brain. That's a lot of stuff, man. I think if ever there was a concise 1 hour 101 on the workings of the brain, I think we just did it. More specifically, Dean just did it. I just pressed record. As I said, if you want to find out more about the brilliant work of Mr. Dean Burnett, please go to deanburnett.com. I will put a link in the show notes. There are videos there. There's a blog. There's a link to his amazing podcast, Why Does This Thing Exist?, which is hilarious. And links to all of his books as well, including The Happy Brain, The Idiot Brain, Psychological, and his latest one, Emotional Intelligence. And there will be another one coming soon by the sound of it. So you better get reading, man. Massive thanks to our guest this week, Mr. Dean Burnett, for being such a legend. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Whilst I got you, please subscribe to the goddamn podcast. Most of you still haven't done it yet. Come on, it's not a lot to ask, man. Get clicking. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the mailing list, please subscribe at jameskennedystuff.com/tribe so that I can actually communicate with some of you people and let you know when I got new shit happening, because the social media algorithms are just absolutely ridiculous these days. Social media has become a joke. Anything posted on any social media platform is reaching less than 0.1% of its followership now. So you guys are missing out, and it's really frustrating for the content providers. So join the mailing list. It's totally free. You won't get spammed, and I can keep you up to date with all the cool stuff that you're missing out on. So that's jameskennedystuff.com/tribe. Get over there, whack your email address in, and we can hang out in our own little community outside of Zucker Dick's fucking monopoly. I'll be back next week with another brilliant guest. In the meantime, have an awesome week, and I will see you next time. Cheers, guys.